Hey everybody, it's me, John Anthony Chihak Soldero. I am the anti-hero, and it is Friday. We're back again with another episode of Grade That Comic. This is what, the fourth take that I'm doing now? I don't remember. Trying to get it right, trying to stay under 10 minutes, which is kind of like my rule for Grade That Comic, so that hopefully you'll stay through the entire video. We grade a book, a story, on a 10.0 perfect scale. Not unlike the Olympics, except it doesn't go by 1 point, it goes by like 0.5. It's the CGC, CBCS, PGX standards. This week, we are grading Home, which just finished up last Wednesday with chapter 5 of what's now appearing to be just the first story arc for these characters. And I gotta say, when this book first was solicited and was being talked about, there was a lot of conflicting emotions amongst the people seeing it, which I'm going to try to avoid for myself, because part of what I do here, other than letting you know how it connected to me on a personal level, like with Stray Dogs, um, I want to remain impartial and more down the middle so that I can actually do a level headed critique on this. So, everybody has very specific feelings on immigration, whether it's documented, whether it's not documented, whether it's people seeking asylum, like our protagonists in this book. Sorry. So Julio Anta gives kind of like a breakdown at the end of each issue. At the end of issue 5, he talks about how this is not the end of the story, how he's got a lot of further details to go through on this, which in a way I can really appreciate. But I do have to say his writing does come across very much like this is a first effort. I don't know how much influence the editors at Image had with this project, but I feel like if the editors took a little bit more control of it and gave him a little bit more focus and direction, this project could have been just of a higher quality in execution to me. It had a lot of potential because of the subject matter it was dealing with. But for my liking, there was way too much exposition in this story. I mean, part of comics is the balance between the written, spoken word, and the imagery. And I don't feel like there was a balance to that. I feel like the explanation and the words and the dialogue and everything kind of had to make up for Anna Wyshek's, and I hope I'm saying her name right, her artwork, because the artwork was also very inconsistent. It felt like I'm not saying she's a bad artist. I'm saying for my tastes, or for how I would have done this book, she was not the right artist to pick for the execution of this book. There was a lot of issues with scale in this story, where people are standing next to buses and they're as tall as the bus, or they're standing next to an ice SWAT tank and they're as tall as the SWAT tank, or the guy sitting on top of the tank doesn't look like he would fit inside of the tank. And then because the exposition is there, it doesn't carry over enough with the visual of how the characters are feeling. Now, there's a big gripe I have with this book that I have with every other book that does this. It's not isolated to Home. When you're having a character speak in a different language, in this case, of course, it's Spanish, but in the X-Men, when you have Nightcrawler speaking in German, or Colossus speaking in Russian, it's always in English, and then it's got the little asterisk and it says from Russian, from German, translated, This book does it a little bit differently. It's not just the asterisk, it's all the Spanish language is in red, which is fine, but I kind of would have preferred if it had actually been in Spanish and the characters and the emotions would convey to me what they were saying. I don't speak Spanish, I don't read Spanish, I understand it very, very little, working on that. But this is one of those times where, because of the subject matter, I think translating it into English and having it be so prevalent throughout all 5 issues that you lose a lot with it. Now, if I'm listening to somebody speak a different language, it does not matter what that language is, and I'm watching their body language and I'm hearing the tone and inflection in their voice, I can tell where they're coming from. But with this artwork, unfortunately, you didn't get that. So if you took out all the dialogue, you would have seen that they were in a detention center. You would have seen that mom kind of looked sad, but you wouldn't have seen, the postures that were needed, the defeated looks in people's faces, like the sullen glances. There was one whole scene where an individual who's in the same holding pen as the mom explains everything to her, which really threw me off as a reader because we'd already had this explained at the very, very beginning, with the introduction about how this is 2018 and families are being separated at the border. So doing that again for the sake of that character understanding, it breaks it down quite a bit, and it loses a lot because you could have just had him walk up, put his hand on her back, and like just start talking to her, and you would have gotten that same visual. Another positive was the potential for this book. I'm one of those people that if something comes off and it's really, really hyped, I'm one of two ways. I'm either really excited about it, kind of like what happened last night at the United Center with AEW and CM Punk coming back. Like I was very excited for that hype, and it paid off with the roar, with what he said. And then there's a book like this, or a book like Berserker, that is hyped up. This was not hyped like Berserker, okay? This book did not make $2 million, which was record-setting crowdfunding campaign. It did not have an international celebrity like Keanu Reeves attached to it. It did not have industry veterans attached in writing and art and doing variant covers attached to the book like Home did. Home's hype was because of the story and the subject matter. And unfortunately, it did not live up to that hype. Not for me. I would not have gone in a superhero direction with this story. I would have gone with something that was much more realistic. I feel like adding that superhero element to it, which brings it into, the grander world of comic books, has it lose so much with its impact of the message that it could have conveyed. I would have done this more as a suspense thriller, or it's like a drama, but it's a superhero drama. So it's trying to compare itself with things like Astro City and even Watchmen, which was a deconstruction on comic books and superhero comic books. But this is a deconstruction on border politics and immigration ideals and thought processes and human rights as a whole. And I feel like you cannot do that with the way that this was executed, unfortunately. Again, I really wanted to like this book a lot. One of the other positives I will have to say is Brian Valenza's colors were very consistent throughout the entirety of this book. It was a very warm tone because of his powers, so that really resonated with everything. There were a lot of autumn type colors, reds and browns, that really brought out a lot in the imagery. Unfortunately, a lot of the rest of this story, it just did not resonate with me. The artwork left me wanting. The exposition left me not overwhelmed, underwhelmed, and kind of bored, actually. I like a comic to speak for itself. I don't need it to tell me everything that's going on. That's the artwork of a comic book. And this is very much showing as a first story that somebody did. And don't get me wrong, I'll look back at Euthanasia issues 1 through 5, And those are hard to get through. And I loved working on those every minute. And there were some people who really appreciated them. But that was definitely a first effort for me. And I'm hoping that Julio Anta's work can continue to get better because Home just didn't live up to the hype for me. And so my grade for Home is a 5.5. Again, like I said, I had high hopes for this story. I was thinking it was going to be different than it was executed. And while I didn't care for this story because of the execution and the way the characters were portrayed, it got people talking about comic books, and that's a positive. It got people wanting to read it who probably wouldn't normally read a comic book or probably wouldn't normally read this because of what they were going to try to find out. I could go much further into this, but I'm already a minute past my 10 minutes of trying to keep this review to 10 minutes or less. But my name is John Anthony Chihawk Soltero. I am the anti-hero. And keep reading comics, and I'll see you in the comments.